This time of year, little kids wait in long lines at shopping malls to sit in Santa's lap and tell him what they want for Christmas. But how would you react if he already knew everything about you? That's exactly what happened to Jimmy and Alicia Vasquez when they brought their dying 6-month-old child to take a picture with Santa. After an emergency C-section, the doctor discovered that the baby, Jimmy Jr., had a slight heart murmur. He said not to worry and that they'd keep an eye on it, and time would tell if they needed to do anything about it. Well, almost immediately after bringing Jimmy home, they started having complications. Jimmy kept getting sick all the time. Colds, upper respiratory infections, congestions. A few months went by and his health continued to fail, and ultimately he had to be referred to a specialist at the Cook Children's Medical Center in Fort Worth, Texas. The new doctor recommended a series of tests that would reveal just how serious little Jimmy's condition was. An echocardiogram revealed a hole in his heart and a blockage of flow from the right side of his heart to his lungs. Something this serious required immediate surgery. The doctor explained to Jimmy and Alicia that if they didn't operate now, Jimmy's heart could literally explode. Their 6-month-old was now about to have open heart surgery. The doctor was open with them on how the surgery would go and what complications could arise, and told them that this was basically a 50-50 shot at little Jimmy surviving the surgery. The parents bravely faced the possibility that they may never see their child alive again. Alicia was thinking, this can't be happening, not during Christmas. This is supposed to be the best time of the year, a time that brings families together. If Jimmy didn't make it through this surgery, they weren't going to have him for Christmas. His first Christmas. So they thought they wanted to do something special for Jimmy before his surgery. They asked permission to take him out of the hospital and take him to go see a Santa Claus and take his picture with him. Well, the doctor gave them permission to go, but they had to be back at the hospital at a certain time to prep little Jimmy for the surgery. Well, luckily there was a shopping mall nearby, and sure enough, there was a Santa taking pictures with little kids. Well, they got in line, but this line is extremely long, and they didn't think they would make it back to the hospital in time. But as soon as they got in line, Santa started waving at them, motioning to them to come to him. Well, they look around to see if the Santa could be waving at anybody else, but no, he was looking directly at them, still motioning to come to him. So they feel bad cutting all the people in line, but they make their way to the front and they see Santa Claus. Well, Santa Claus says, "Merry Christmas. Can I hold him?" Well, they placed little Jimmy on Santa's lap, and Santa bowed his head closer to him and said, "You're gonna have a great heart for Christmas. Everything's gonna be all right." Alicia was in shock and said, "Well, how did you know?" Santa Claus just looked at her and winked and said, "Santa Claus knows everything." Santa asked them if they wanted to take a quick picture, and they said, "Yes, we would, but we'll get back in line with the rest of the people." But Santa Claus said, "No, you can take your picture now. You have to get back to the hospital. Just go ahead and take your picture." So Alicia got her camera out and snapped a picture. But she's thinking, how did he know that we had to get back to the hospital? So after the picture, they thanked him for his encouraging words and they headed back to the hospital. On their way back to the hospital, they're completely losing it. How did he know that he had a heart problem? And how did they know he had to get back to the hospital for surgery? They just could not rationalize how this guy could have known. In the early morning before the surgery, each parent spent their own special time with Jimmy Jr., just loving on him. It was very emotional because they didn't know whether they were going to see him again, but they kept remembering what that Santa Claus had told them. Well, the doctors finally rolled little Jimmy away into surgery, leaving Jimmy Sr. and Alicia hugging, crying. Several hours went by, both of their minds are racing, and fear and doubt begin to creep in. Finally, the doctor came back in the waiting room and told him that the surgery did not go as expected. It went way better. He said Jimmy did wonderfully, there were no complications whatsoever, and they did not think this surgery was going to be as easy as it was. The doctor took them to go see Jimmy, and they just held him, and they were so filled with joy and peace. And Jimmy was able to leave the hospital 4 days later. On the way home, Alicia had a thought to stop by the mall and go visit the Santa Claus and tell him thank you for his encouraging words and to show him Jimmy Jr. But when they arrived, they were in for a surprise. It was a different Santa Claus. They asked a young worker girl where the other Santa was from a couple of days ago, and the girl says, "This is the only Santa we've had for weeks." Well, Alicia said, "You must have had somebody else that day." The young girl emphatically said, "No, this is the only Santa we've had." And the young girl actually gets the mall director to prove her point. And the mall director comes out and explains to Jimmy and Alicia that this, in fact, is the only Santa Claus that they've had all season long. There have been no other Santa Clauses at this mall. Alicia and Jimmy looked at each other and said, that was an angel. It had to be an angel because that was not the Santa that they saw before. Jimmy and Alicia just felt thankful and blessed to have that experience. And even though it was a really tough time for them, through it all, they felt at peace, especially after that Santa Claus encounter. Who do you think this mysterious Santa was? And how did he know everything about little Jimmy? And if you want more angel videos, watch this one.